Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for tonight's webinar for PowerTeacherProUse Tips and Tricks. Give us about 2 minutes and we'll get started. If you'd like to, in the chat, you can access tonight's presentation. Just click on the bit.ly there. You may want to write down that bit.ly for future reference. We'll get started in about a minute and a half. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and start our webinar for the evening. My name is Jill Dare. I work for the Department of Public Instruction's Digital Teaching and Learning team. I coordinate professional learning for our division. Also on the webinar tonight, we have Tika Clavel, who is our eastern half of the state educator on loan. She comes to us from Cumberland County. We also have Katrina Finch, who is on the webinar tonight. She's going to be our facilitator of the content. She is also coming to us from Cumberland County. We'd really like to thank you all for taking your time this evening to join the webinar. If you will look in the chat, there is a bit.ly, and if you'll click on that bit.ly, it'll take you to tonight's presentation. So I'll give you a moment just to do that. Katrina, if you'll switch tabs for me for just a moment so that you're on the presentation tab. And Katrina, if you'll go to the second slide. If everybody will go to the second slide, there's an online registration. Tonight's webinar is brought to you through the Digital Learning Initiative, which is a legislatively mandated and funded initiative. And that's how we're able to fund these webinars throughout the year. So if you will take just a few moments to complete that registration, we do have your contact information because you're logged into the webinar, but we'd also like for you to complete this online registration. This is also how you will receive your certificate. Those of you who cannot see the bit.ly, if you look in the bottom of your panel for the go-to webinar, there is a chat, and if you'll open up that chat, it will take you to you can click on the hyperlink that's there. Anita, are you able to find that bit.ly? And Andrea, are you able to see the presentation? So I'm going to send to everybody a link to the bit.ly. So in the chat, in the bottom right-hand side of your panel for the webinar, you should see a chat. And in that chat, if you open it up, you will see a link to the bit.ly. And for those of you who can't see it directly, I'm linking it to your questions that you're posting. And when you go to the second slide in this slide presentation, you can click on the picture that says registration, and it will actually give you a hyperlink to the registration. Anyone else need assistance with? All right, I'm sending it to Cherie. And Adriana and Alan. Okay, so what we'll do is, no, I'm not sending it to your email, Adriana. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead with the presentation. We do have your login information from the webinar, so we'll be able to get you that information. If you're not able to get to the registration site, we're not going to worry about that. I don't want to eat up your time with that registration. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Katrina, and she will start with the content of tonight's webinar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for attending the webinar. My name is Katrina Finch, and there's contact information on slide number 3 for those of you guys who want to peruse that at some point. The topics that we are going to discuss tonight are reports, accessing dropped students, creating assignments for student groups, entering grades for new students, extra credit, be it percent or points, and linking URLs to assignments. And what I'm going to do is follow along with the presentation, but I'm going to do it straight in PowerTeacher Pro. And we'll go ahead and get started with that. Once you're in PowerTeacher Pro, you have 6 charms down the left side of your screen. We're going to jump right into reports. And the reports that I want to show you guys are from the perspective of the individual student, or if you're wanting to look up information about an individual student. And you can find many of these reports in the by clicking the student charm. Go ahead and find the student that you want to work with. And by default, your demographics will come up. And if you use the drop menu, you have other types of reports that will show up. For instance, assignments that the student has in your class. And one of my favorites is the quick lookup traditional. And what that shows me is a snapshot of what's going on with that student in all of his or her classes. And the nice thing is I can go just like I was looking at this from a parent perspective or a student perspective, and I can go ahead and click on the grade for that particular quarter, and I will see information about all of all of the assignments that that student has completed or not completed. Um, Teacher comments can be shown here, as well as the section description. Again, clicking on the drop menu, you can look at different types of reports in this section. To go over it in summary, you select the student charm, find the student that you want to look information up, and actually, I misstated earlier, the report that's going to show up is the report that you were last looking at. So I was last looking up a progress report for the other student, and so the progress report is what came up now, but I can go ahead and make those changes and select my demographics, assignments, etc. Okay, are there any questions about those three reports right now? Okay, two of those reports.
We just have one comment from Thomas.
Okay.
Who said, "Wow, that's something I can really use as a coach to track my players." So fantastic!
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing, Thomas.
Yes, definitely. I would just like to remind you guys that there are also additional reports that can be found in the teacher portal. Two of the reports here in the grade book can also be found in the portal. So, and without further ado, I'm going to go on to the next topic, which is accessing dropped students. And so the scenario that I have typed up for you guys is John was having difficulties with another student and was moved to a different class. His new teacher wants info, but like has happened to all of us, he got switched before we were able to keep up or go ahead and print out his information. There is a way that you can do that. And by that, you can going to go back to your student charm. And just to give you an example, we've been in third period or visual arts, grade 7 third. If the student that we want to look up or the class that we want to change to, if it's in a different class, we're going to select that class and then go to back to your student charm. And most of us are familiar with this view, and we know that there is students and the number of students we currently have, but right over here, there is a link that will show drop students. And unfortunately, there are no drop students right now in this particular instance. But if there were drop students from your class, you can select that student and all of his or her assignment information would be populated, and you could then print that information off. I do not suggest that information be sent anywhere beyond your current school or your local school and the teachers within your local school. Again, how did I get there? I'm going to go, my kid was in 5th period and he moved to 6th period, so I'm going to go back to my 5th period class. I'm going to look up information about a particular student. I'm going to slide over here all the way to the right and show dropped, and it would show any students that were dropped from this particular class. And are there any questions for showing dropped students?
Katrina, there's not a question about showing dropped students, and you may not, but there is a question about the reports that you were showing earlier. And you may not know this, But is there a way to run the report so that coaches like Thomas don't have to sit and go through individual students? Is that something that a coach could run, or is that something a data manager is probably going to have to run?
The data manager is probably going to have to run it because the only teacher or the only students that we can see in Power School, or excuse me, Power Teacher Pro, are students that are assigned directly to us. We are either the lead teacher or the co-teacher for those students. I haven't seen that coaches be able to access other students. And there is no way, to my knowledge, that it can be run or report can be run by a coach.
So Brian, we will find out an answer for that and get back to you. But I think that it's a report that your data manager can run as a special group to send to your coaches. All right.
Awesome. All right, thanks so much, guys. Moving on, the next topic is something that is near and dear to my heart because as an elective teacher, we get students who are in various programs, whether it's the ID Mild program or an autistic program, and with our regular students and our AIG students. So we get a little bit of everybody, and as we know, not all students are able to do all of the assignments. And in order to provide students challenges and yet keep parents from asking questions about assignments that maybe don't pertain to their students, there is a way to create assignments for specific student groups. And we'll go ahead and jump into that. This scenario that is written out, you've decided to challenge yourself by providing students in your class choices for a major project. You're allowing students to choose from 3 different types of assignments to demonstrate their ability to explain what literary theme is. All right, so all the ELA teachers said woohoo on this one. So we're going to jump right into the creation of an assignment. And I'm going to go up to my blue tab in the top right corner, click Create an Assignment. And I'm going to just call this assignment Literary Theme Project Movie. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and associate it with a category. I'm going to go ahead and leave points by default, just leave it alone. Go ahead and give 100 points. And now it's time to go in and select the students who have said, hey, I want to do the movie project for my project. So there are tabs. Let me go back to the assignment. By default, you're in the assignment tab when you create the assignment. And you can go ahead, you can see that there's a students tab, a standard tab, and a publish tab. And all of these have to do with the assignment that you are currently working on. In the student tab, by default, when you create an assignment, it is going to apply to all students. So what you can do with this instance is we're going to select, there's 2 different buttons here or tabs here, show selected students and add remove students. And we're wanting to remove some of these students because not everybody has chosen to chosen to do the movie project. So in order to get rid of the whole class, we uncheck the box at the top, and I'm going to go in and select the students. The first 5 students, or excuse me, the first 6 students, they said, hey Finch, I want to do this. And I say, okay, right on, sounds good. And with that, I'm going to go back to my assignment, make sure all is good, but put a description down here if I want to, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this assignment. All right, and now what I want to do is I'm just going to duplicate this assignment, because the only thing that's going to change for me are going to be the actual project and the students that have chosen this project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the next 4 students have decided, hey, I want to do the narrative project. We're going to go back to our assignment and click on save. And as you can see, as our assignments are populating behind the assignment window, the first assignment was only assigned to 6 students, and you can see that 0 out of 6 have been scored. And the second assignment, 0 out of 4. And we're going to duplicate this assignment. And the last is build model. So we're appealing to all types of learners. We're going to go back into our students, and then we're going to select the last students in our class. Make changes to the description as you need to. Go ahead and click on save. And as you can see, the assignments are going to populate. What I want to show you is when you have selected certain students in the score sheet, I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but there is, whoops, from the score sheet view, there is no way I can put a score in for those students that have not been assigned to this assignment. In fact, if I try to, I get a message on the right side saying this assignment is for specific students. The nice thing about being able to put together groups is you have students, for instance, had a situation where someone asked about the grade book because they had various ROTC ranks in their room, so and grades, and this utility allows you to go ahead and provide individualized assignments for the different groups within a class. And I think that's about it. Keep in mind that only the assignments that a student has assigned to them will populate on a progress report. So if I go in and have print a progress report right now, you're not going to, each student is not going to have 3 assignments. They're only going to have 1 assignment. And that's pretty much it when it comes to creating assignments for student groups. You know, the sky is the limit with this particular utility because people, whether you're ELA, social studies, one of the sciences, or even electives, if you have to modify assignments or provide separate assignments, this allows you to go ahead and give full credit to those modified assignments or those different assignments without having to field questions from parents. That's pretty much it when it comes to the creating assignments for student groups. and I will be happy to field questions for this particular utility.
Katrina, we have a question
Okay.
from Cynthia. She asked, what is the difference between assigning points versus percentages?
That is a hot topic that um, is a debate for the century, I think. And as far as assigning, when you create an assignment, the biggest thing is sticking to one or the other. When it comes to when it comes to creating assignment, for instance, if I go into class, create an assignment, and if I want to go ahead and use percent, don't let this here fool you. You need to make sure that it is 100, so that you're getting that full 100% for that assignment. As far as the differences when it comes to grade books, that's a teacher's preference, or that can also be a site-based decision or a county-based decision based on your LEA. I don't know if that helped. Did that help at all?
I'm not seeing any additional questions in reference to that. And you're right. I know you and I have had conversations about that. It is a hot topic. I do have another question from Ms. Franklin. Can I go back and modify an assignment after I've already given grades?
Yes, as long as it is in the current grading period. That is another hot topic because unfortunately, the grade book cannot be locked down. To my knowledge, Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, Tika, but that is something that a lot of data managers have problems with, is teachers go to previous grading periods. For instance, if I'm in my second quarter and a project from quarter one carried over into quarter two, but I want to go make the change after quarter one has already been stored. When you go make those changes, that causes problems if you are making changes to prior grading periods. As far as making changes in a current grading period, you're pretty good as long as you try to nip any problems in the bud within the first couple of weeks. And what I mean by that is I've seen where teachers have accidentally created hybrid grade books where they've created both percent assignments as well as point assignments, and they did not have 100% for their percent assignments. And what that does is, I don't know the mathematics behind it all, but I will tell you that when I helped a teacher straighten out a grade book, there was about 10 to 15 overall percentage points that changed for all of the students in her class. So if it's going to change that drastically and you're at the end of your grading period, that's something you might want to think about and maybe chalk it up to a learning experience, because you've already told parents for that quarter that particular student is earning a particular type of grade. And if you make a lot of changes to your assignments and it negatively affects that student, you're going to have some upset parents to try to appease. So I'm not sure if that helped, but those are just some experiences that I've run into when it comes to grading.
So I just want to jump in for just a moment. Whenever you're thinking about how you want to do your grades, you want to be able to mathematically explain your grades to your students as well as parents. So if you understand points and are comfortable with points, then go with points. If you understand percentages, then go with percentages. If you're on the fence and you're working in a team, I would talk to your team and come to a consensus about, what maybe they are using across a grade level, so you have consistency and you have supports for explaining. If you're on the fence, talk to your administrator about their preferences. Typically, districts have a policy about homework and the maximum amount it can count if it counts. So always check into that also. Hope that kind of answers a lot of your questions. I would check with, teammates.
Jill, I'd like to add one other point just to answer two of the questions that showed up in the question board about if there's situations where you have to change from a previous semester. You definitely have to let your data manager know, because as Katrina mentioned, those grades are stored. So once you try to change them, it does not affect the store unless they are redone by your data manager. So hopefully that answers two of the questions that we have here in the question column.
All right. So we're going to go over extra credit in just a few minutes. So we'll address that. There's a question about what about when the grade is an incomplete in the first semester and for the second, as Tika said, you'll need to talk to your data manager and make sure that gets corrected. And then if you put in an assignment that's similar, why do you have to use a different name? Because the name for an assignment is the name, and it can't have the same name for a second assignment. You'll have, if it's a second assignment, you maybe want to have an A or a B or a 1 or a 2, but each assignment gets an assignment code. So you'll need different names. And then somebody's breathing into the headset. So we'll work on that. Sorry about that. Okay, Katrina, we'll turn it back over to you to go to the next topic.
All right, sounds great. So one of the next topics, or the next topic that I have, is entering grades for new students in current grading periods. There are a lot of different ways to handle transfer grades. I have provided a how-to, I guess, on what I do and how our county has come up with some policy when it comes to transfer grades. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a transfer grade. And this student coming in is coming in with an 85. And the student is coming in during the 5th week of the current grading period. And if you are following along, I want to just jump over here to tips and tricks for just a second. And I want to just show you that a good rule of thumb is to think about breaking your quarter into thirds, because we can place weights on grades, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And in the scenario that I am going to work out for you, the student is coming in with an 85 during week 5. So that would be during the second, third, or the second part of the grading period. So I'm going to go ahead back to my grade book now. And it's going to be Morgan that comes in that needs the transfer grade. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the assignment. And I'm going to just call this assignment transfer grade. And I can go ahead and put her name here, or her name here. And I'm going to put this assignment in the classwork category because classwork constitutes the bulk of my assignments. Out of 100 points. And this is where I can make changes to the weight of my grade. When I select plus weight, I can leave it 1, 2, 3, go on up to 4, 5, 6. I don't suggest that at all. My suggestion is to go ahead and weight that grade based on thirds. Again, referring back to the comment Jill made, however you can mathematically explain, how this transfer grade is going to impact their current grading period. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it as a 2. And if you recall, we can assign assign specific students to assignments. And since Morgan is the only one who's going to receive this transfer grade, I'm only going to assign it to her. And I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And let's say I have a new student that comes in 7 weeks in. I can go ahead. I'll go ahead and click on save. If I want to, here's my transfer grade. And instead of me going back in and creating everything from scratch, I can go ahead and edit the assignment. I can get to that in various ways. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Transfer grade, edit the assignment, and keep in mind, we don't want to edit Morgan's. We're just going in here so we can click on that super cool duplicate button that in essence will save me time in the long run. And now we're going to say that this is Sammy Jones. I don't think I have a Sammy Jones, but that's okay. And this time they came in week 7, so we're going to weigh it a little heavier. We're going to go and assign our students. We go back to our add and remove students. Well, we don't have a Sammy Jones, but we have a Joey Edwards, so there we go. Now we can go ahead and go ahead and click on save. And when I go to the score sheet, I have 2 transfer grades, but as you can see, only the specific students who transferred in are going to have that transferred grade showed up. What I would suggest also with that particular assignment is in the description, make sure that you let the parents know that this is a transfer grade. That came from the student's prior school. It's not something that we just created and we pulled out of thin air. It is something the school sent to us, and we have to go ahead and average that grade into what we are doing. And we can go ahead and save it and close it. And so now when I go back, oh, well, we're not going to see it here, but if you select the assignment from the student or parent view on the assignment, we'll now have a hyperlink, and that description will pop up with the assignment's hyperlink. All right, all kinds of nifty little things in that example. So I will go ahead and field some questions now.
So Tika's been answering questions as you've been working, but we have one question from Brenda. Why was
Okay.
the times weight entered as a 2 for a total value of 200 points for the transfer grade?
It's as though you have two of the exact same assignments, and if I only put one in, I'm not sure I'm following exactly, but if I only put one assignment in and leave it as one weight for all of these other assignments that the other students in that class have had to account for, that might be kind of difficult to explain, at least when you add some weights to that transfer grade. It kind of provides some leverage for the efforts that student made at their previous school.
You'll want to think of that grade proportionally for how many maybe they missed in your class or how many assignments they missed in your class. So it may be that you count at a value of 5 or a value of 10, depending upon how many grades you've given other students in your class or how many weeks they've missed out of your class because they're transferring in. So really, 2 was just an example, but it could be it could be much higher than that, depending upon when they transfer into your class. Does that help, Brenda?
And this is Tika. I know when Katrina and I worked together, what she always suggested to me when we had transfer kids in, especially late in a quarter or semester, is that we applied a one bump for every week. So if that student came in on week 5, we made that transfer grade a 5 times weight to represent the 5 weeks that they had previously missed. And that had always worked for my grades in the grade book, and it evened out so that one thing wasn't outweighted towards the other, exactly what Jill just said.
Yeah. When you're doing transfer grades, something to keep in mind is you don't know what that student was coming from their last school. You don't know how many, absences they had. So you don't want to weight that transfer grade too heavily because you don't know what their circumstances are. So keep that in mind as well. But you do want to, again, hold them accountable for the work that they did in that other school. So. And anything else?
Trina, I do want to back up. There was one question earlier that we missed.
Okay.
Back when you were talking about drop students.
Right.
Would you print the dropped students through the report that you were sharing?
I would say that you can do that because being able to see those drop students, what I would do is go to the students, show my drop students, select that student, and then click on the assignments report, generate an assignments report, and that'll give you detailed information about what that student did while they were in your class.
Catherine, let us know if that did or didn't answer your question from earlier. Sorry we missed that one. Okay, so another question from Brenda. She wanted to know why wasn't a percentage Morgan transferred in, say, 85%, 5 weeks into the 9-week period?
So, okay, I think I'm following what you're saying. So by default, your this particular assignment is going to be out of 100, whether it's percents or your points. It's that full credit. That's what you're creating the assignment to be. Now, when I go over here and I type in Morgan's grade, that's where I'm going to put my 85. It's going to be in the score sheet. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that was it, Katrina. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Now, because I cannot go back to previous grading periods in this particular example, it's going to be hard to show. But if I am in quarter 3 and I'm in my current grading period, we're good to go. I showed you how to do that. But what happens when I've got a year-long class and I have to go back and provide a grade for student in quarter 1 and provide a grade for the student in quarter 2? My suggestion is not necessarily to override the final grade for that particular quarter, because the grades are being calculated. I would again create a transfer grade and make sure that when I create that transfer grade, for instance, and I want to make sure that the due date, I can back it up, well, only to July, again, in this particular example, but I can back it up to the end of that first period, so that transfer grade calculates correctly in quarter 1 with my quarter 2 transfer grade. So I might have to put in 3 transfer grades for a student, 1 for quarter 1, 1 for quarter 2, 1 for quarter 3, because the calculations behind the scenes have to happen correctly. And what we have found in trying to put transfer grades in, unlike the old version of PowerTeacher, this new version really likes to calculate assignments rather than just an overridden grade. That's what I've found, and that would be my suggestion if you have a year-long class and have a student that transfers in quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, etc.
Real quick, Katrina, can you show them how you got to the score sheet?
Sure. There's a couple of different ways that you can get to the score sheet. On the left side of my screen, I have my charms. When I want to have anything to do with grading, I'm going to click on the A+, and I can see my information in list form. I can see my information in score sheet form. If I am looking at one particular assignment, in the top left corner, you can return to score sheet in that way. Anything else?
Nope, that was it. Thank you, Katrina. You can continue.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Hot topic. The next item is a hot topic, not up for debate. Just letting you know, this is just me providing some information for you. If you want to use it, great. If you don't want to use it, great. The reason I researched extra credit is because I had teachers at my school who were struggling with ways to provide their students extra credit opportunities if they were using percents only. Very hard to come up with a way to do that without just adding the extra credit to another assignment. So there was someone who asked about percentages versus points earlier. There is information in the presentation about points versus percentages. Excuse me. But again, it's not something that's necessarily up for debate at the moment. I'm going to show you two different ways that you can provide extra credit. So the first way that I'm going to provide extra credit is if I'm a points person. So I'm a teacher that uses points, and I like to create opportunities for my students because I really like them to take things home and get them signed and bring them back. I'm trying to, kill two birds with one stone, give the kids something, and also get the parents, go ahead and make sure that I'm making that parent contact because, for instance, currently I have 201 students in my class, on my class list right now, and there's no way to be able to contact them all. So extra credit is a great way to do that. And I send home progress reports at progress report time, individualized progress reports. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so progress reports, and I make sure that it is spelled out extra credit. And I typically keep my extra credit in the classwork category. Keep in mind, I'm using points right now. So where I have score type, I'm using points. So with points, I have the opportunity to go ahead and click on extra points. Students cannot earn any points by default. It's only extra credit. So I provide 0 score entry points and 25 extra credit. So it's not going to hurt anyone. I also provide this extra credit. Make sure I provide a description so that when my parents look at this assignment, oh, well, why didn't little Billy get the extra credit? Well, he was supposed to have you sign it and bring it back, and I didn't receive it from you. Excuse me. When I click on save, what does this look like in the score sheet? Actually, the best way to see the extra credit is going to be from my assignment list, because over here to my far right, you can see that extra credit points are worth 0. Okay. Any questions about extra credit with points? I'm going to show some ideas with percentage, but I'd like to go ahead and field the extra credit with points first.
No questions, but you definitely have some great comments here, very clear step by step. So great job, Katrina.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, now we all know if we're percentage teachers, we might be scratching our heads thinking of a way to provide extra credit. This is my way, or actually my suggested way. We're going to go ahead and create that assignment, and we're going to change it. Oh, extra credit. And we're just going to call it percentage. All right, again, I'm going to associate that with my classwork. Score type, points, changing it to percent. If you notice, I lose my opportunity in the score section, in the score row, for extra credit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put 100 points on this, but the next item says count in final grade. I am going to uncheck that. That way, my students who turn in extra credit can see that that extra credit was turned in, and we can provide a note in the description. Students who turn this assignment in will have 1% added to their final grade for the quarter. Now, if you want it to be worth more, go ahead, 2%, whatever you want to do. Just keep in mind, communication is key. With anything that you're doing in the grade book, communicate. Use the description. I'm going to go ahead and save this. You know, back when I go into my score sheet and we have the extra credit here, and we can go ahead and say did not turn in if parents go, well, I don't know, you know, why didn't he get that extra credit? Maybe they didn't turn it in, maybe they didn't turn it in on time. The biggest thing that you can do to help yourself as a teacher is to communicate and try to be proactive when it comes to grades, and explaining how you're doing things. That will help to alleviate a lot of the parental concerns that you run into. So that's just one way to do extra credit with percent. I don't really know of too many other ways, honestly, other than a manual override at the end of the quarter, unless you add percentages to individual assignments. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to ask away.
Okay, I have a question from Brian. He says, why wouldn't you use collected only here, and then those who did not turn it in would not get the extra percent? Maybe I don't understand the collected only category. I'd like you to share your thoughts on that.
I think for me, and if I'm a parent, I want to see that my kids have numbers. It's one thing to just, to me, collected is, okay, I collected the folder from the kid. He brought in his syllabus. But whether or not it's counted in the grade, I think parents and students like to see a number associated with their efforts. So you could very easily use the collected only category or the collected only score type, but taking that out of the final grade calculation is aesthetically pleasing for both students and parents.
All right, I have another question for you, Katrina. I'm sorry, I'm trying to help you out here and answer some of these questions as we go.
Okay.
How do you override an assignment?
So I think that, let me go ahead and throw some grades in here. Oh, whoops, discard. Oh, 25. Whoop. Ah.
While you're working on that, I just want to let everybody know we are down to the last minute or so. So make sure that you're checking in on that presentation. We're going to try to get as many questions filtered as we can. And we thank you guys so much for your patience. Go ahead.
Okay, so when I mentioned overriding, you can override any type of assignment. You can go make changes to any of the grades. When I talk about overriding a grade, I'm talking about the overall grade for that class. So let's say Morgan's grade is an 85%, and she did the extra credit, and I said that if they did extra credit, then they would earn 2 extra credit points. This is where I'm going to do the grade override, and it is on that final grade. And anytime, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save, anytime I override a grade, I'm going to get that triangle in the top left corner. That's really important, because if you go in and make additional changes, keep in mind that grade that you manually overrode is going to stay. Okay, it is going to stay until you reset that grade. And you can reset or recalculate that grade in the far right corner when you have that final grade selected. Again, when I make a grade override for a numeric grade override, I end up with a gray triangle here in the corner. And when I want to allow my grade book to go in and recalculate that grade again, I reset, or using this button over on the far right side that refreshes grades. Now, let me make one more note. If I make changes to categories, and weighting with categories, then I have to recalculate my final grade. So that is something that is a totally different scenario, and I can provide follow-up information for that. I see that I've run out of time, and if you have the bit.ly, there's additional information. I will be happy to send videos to you guys. If you click on the opinion link, I'm sorry that I was not able to get to the other. Sorry, guys. I was not able to get to hyperlinks, but I can follow that up with a video. Plan on doing a number of videos for this particular session. And without further ado, I will pass it on. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind words and your attention. Have a fabulous evening.
So Katrina, just a couple questions before we leave.
Yes.
One was, so you do not change the percentage to accommodate extra points on an assignment, i.e. give a quiz and offer 5 extra questions. So there will be extra credit. Change the percentage to 105 to enter the extra credit points separately.
Okay, so the problem with the old version of PowerTeacher, you could go if I'm not mistaken, you could go above and beyond 100, even if it was a percent. You cannot do that with this version of PowerTeacher Pro. It won't allow you to go over 100. So if you do extra credit, again, I'm not sure how you would do that if a student scored a 100 on a quiz and earned the extra credit. I don't know how to go about providing that extra credit above and beyond the 100. Tika, do you know much about that on the percentage side?
Nope, you nailed it. If you're using percentages, you're going to have to create another assignment for extra credit, as Katrina demonstrated. However, if you're using points, then you can add points there. I do find from a teacher and a parent perspective that either way works. They're very clear, as Katrina mentioned, communication is key. As you saw, she wrote extra credit on there. So either way works. I know parents appreciate seeing it as long as it's there.
So just to let everybody know, since we're out of time, you guys are going to get a follow-up email from this webinar. It will have a PDF to a certificate. It'll have a Google link to a certificate. It'll have a link to the presentation. It will also have a link to tonight's recording of the webinar. And then if you have any additional questions over and beyond that, you can email Tiffany Kinney, who will send that information, and she'll field those questions for you. If you're interested, we're going to be providing these sessions all throughout the month of September. So thank you again for attending, and you guys have a great night.